I'm about to show you a feature on Collective 2 that's gonna blow your mind, so you're gonna want to keep watching. So what you're seeing in front of you is the strategy scoring workbench. And to access this from the investor view, simply go to Find Strategy and then click on Scoring Workbench, and that'll bring you right to it. So what this allows you to do is to create your own formula to rank strategies on Collective 2. So before we get into the nuts and bolts, if you've ever been on the leaderboard page, the strategies you see on this page are actually ranked in order of their C2 score. The C2 score is a proprietary scoring system that Collective 2 uses to rank strategies. So if we click on one of these, let's say Lucid MNQ, you'll see that this one is ranked number 2. Collective 2 uses a number of different variables to calculate the score for each strategy. So you're probably wondering, is there any way that I can look at the formula that's being used to calculate the Collective 2 scores? The C2 score is proprietary. However, what makes the scoring workbench so incredible is you can actually create your own formula for ranking strategies on Collective 2. So let's jump into it and see how it works. So on the right hand side, you'll see a list that says stats available. So essentially what this is a list of all the variables you can use in your custom formula to score strategies on Collective 2. And here you have virtually everything you can think of at your disposal. And if you're not sure what the statistic for each variable will look like, all you have to do is click on this little I symbol. For example, I'm going to take beta and click on that. And here it's actually going to list the beta for each of the top strategies as they're currently ranked by the C2 score. Okay, so now that you know what the scoring workbench is for, how do we actually create a formula and put it to use? So I've actually already created my own score, and as you can see, it's very short. It doesn't require you to be a computer programmer. In fact, there's shortcuts. You don't even need to write down or type out the name of each statistic used. All you have to do is click on a variable that you want to use, and it will automatically appear in this little notepad. So let me just quickly explain the formula that I came up with. So the variables I think are important when scoring a strategy are the strategy's alpha, the strategy's Sortino ratio, the strategy's age, and the strategy's max equity drawdown. You'll also notice that I have, for example, this variable multiplied by 100, and this variable, the Sortino ratio, multiplied by 15. My reasoning for that is the alpha tends to be a much smaller number than the Sortino ratio. So to compensate for that, I gave each one a different weight simply by multiplying each by a factor. So if we click on this little I symbol next to alpha, and we click on the same little I symbol next to Sortino ratio, you'll see that the Sortino ratio is generally much larger, or a much larger number than the alpha. However, I don't think that necessarily means that the Sortino ratio is a lot more important than the alpha, but when we're creating a numerical score, we want to make sure that we are weighting the variables the way that we think makes the most sense. So what I've basically done is I've given alpha a weight of 100 and the Sortino ratio a weight of 15. And the third line, what this does, it essentially says if the Sortino ratio of any strategy that we encounter in the list of all strategies is less than 3, then I'm going to multiply whatever score that I currently have calculated, I'm going to just multiply that by 0. So basically this is an if-then statement. If the Sortino ratio of a strategy is less than 3, then we basically zero out the score. The score becomes 0. Or else, right, that's what this colon does. This means, or else we multiply the score by 1. So essentially what's happening is these first two lines are calculating my score. And this line right here is sort of like a filter that filters out any strategy with a Sortino ratio of less than 3. Similarly, the next line is another filter. This says that if a strategy's age is less than 700, which is about 2 years, then multiply by 0. In other words, I don't want to look at any strategy, or I don't even want to consider any strategies that are less than 700 days old. And that's just my personal preference. Maybe you think that's a ridiculous filter. Well, that's kind of the beauty of the scoring workbench, is you get to decide which stats you're going to use and what filters you're going to use. The last line here is another filter, which says if the maximum drawdown of a strategy is greater than 35%, and that refers to the historical drawdown. Of course, there's no way to predict what the future drawdown will be, but if the historical drawdown of a strategy is greater than 35%, then we're going to ignore that strategy and its score becomes 0. So basically, what this will spit out is the strategies with the highest score, in other words, the highest product of these two lines, my first two lines, and whichever strategy has the biggest number for this product, that's going to be the first one listed. So let's see what the results are when we hit show results. So if we look at the results, this number here is the score calculated by our unique formula. So for example, for this strategy NQ Quickie, the score is 740.2, which is the product of these two first lines that are calculating the score. And in fact, based on these filters that we created for the Sortino ratio, the strategy's age, and the max drawdown, there are actually only 2 strategies that even passed those filters, which are these 2 right here. And we know they passed because if you look at the line-by-line values of our code, you'll see that for the last 3 lines, which were my filters, these line values are 1s, which means these evaluated to true, which means the score was not multiplied by 0 and the strategy has a non-zero score. So as you can see, these 2 qualified and everything else has a 0 in at least one of our lines. Right? So for example, these 2 strategies, the strategy was at least 700 days old, but the Sortino ratio was not greater than 3, and the maximum drawdown did exceed 35%. And if you want to learn more about the syntax of the scoring workbench, simply click over here where it says syntax and math, and this will give you other functions available, as well as useful hints and tips. So the last thing I want to show you is how to actually backtest your custom formula. All you have to do is click on where it says backtest, and then what this will allow us to do is to calculate a score using this custom formula as of a particular date. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put in a date that's approximately a year ago. Let's say 2021, and we'll do December 1st. And then we'll do the results as of the 1st of this month. So let's say 2022, November 1st. So what this will do is instead of calculating our custom score as of today, it's going to use this same formula and calculate the score for all C2 strategies as of a year ago, and then it's going to see how those strategies performed in the last year or so. So let's see how our score performs. So as you can see, we have a few results with a non-zero score. Remember, when we ran our custom formula for all the strategies currently, or I should say as of the last market close, we actually only had 2 that had a non-zero score. However, using our formula, going back about a year, it looks like we had 5 strategies with a non-zero score. So let's take a peek at how those perform. So it looks like the number 1 strategy based on our formula did quite well in the last year. The second and third maybe not so well, and the fourth maybe roughly broke even. The fifth had a hypothetical return of a little over 6%. So what I'm actually going to do is hit this little save button right here. I'm just going to give it a name. I'm going to call it My Formula. So in the next video, what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a brand new smart portfolio, and I'm going to use this exact custom formula to make selections within my smart portfolio. And I'm going to give some updates over time to see how that smart portfolio performed. So make sure you subscribe to the channel so that you're notified when that video comes out.